We've analyzed thousands of medical studies and only brought you the best evidence. Want to know what really works? Then stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe.
You know that little device in your pocket? Maybe you're even holding it right now. It has completely changed our world, right? But what is it actually doing to our brains and our overall well-being? So in this explainer, we're going to dig into the actual science to see what's really going on. All right, so let me start by asking you something. What do you think would happen if you just quit all social media cold turkey for just 2 weeks? Like, would your life get dramatically better, or would it pretty much stay the same? Well, you're not the only one wondering. A group of researchers decided to put this to the test, and what they found, well, it's pretty fascinating and definitely not what you'd expect about our relationship with our phones. Okay, so let's get right into it. Before we can even talk about solutions, we first have to understand the scale of the problem. And that starts with this key phrase, problematic smartphone use. But what does that actually mean? So researchers have this term for it, problematic smartphone use, or PSU for short. And what it really boils down to is this. It's when you can't control your phone use, and it starts leading to real negative impacts on your daily life, your relationships, your work, your health. It's serious stuff. It's often compared to other behavioral addictions. Okay, so how common is this? Really? Is it just a few people? Well, check this out. A massive study, I'm talking a meta-analysis of over 41,000 young people, found that almost 1 in 4, that's 23.3%, shows signs of PSU. So yeah, this is not some small niche problem. It's huge. And when something is that widespread, you know it's going to have some real consequences. So let's take a closer look at the toll this is taking on our health, according to the science.
Yeah, the science is pretty clear on this. Reviews of tons of studies have found direct links between PSU and a whole range of problems. On the mental side, you've got higher rates of depression, anxiety, stress, you name it. Physically, think poor sleep, not being as fit, even things like pain and migraines. And it even affects our brains, making it harder to think straight and keep our emotions in check.
And if you look at the numbers, they are absolutely staggering. So, that same giant study we talked about, it found that young people with PSU were over 3 times more likely to deal with depression and anxiety. And the chances of having poor sleep? Yep, more than 2.5 times higher. These aren't just tiny correlations. These are massive red flags. Okay, so the problem is pretty undeniable, right? So that brings us right back to where we started. Can a simple break, a digital detox, actually fix any of this? To find out, let's go back to that super interesting experiment I mentioned earlier. The whole point of their study was to figure out what really happens when you quit social media for 2 solid weeks. So here's the setup. It was pretty straightforward. First, they got a baseline for everyone's mental health, where they were at to begin with. Then they split them up randomly. One group, the abstinence group, had to quit all social media, cold turkey for 14 days. The other group, the control group, just kept using it like they normally would. And all the while, researchers were checking in with both groups every single day. Okay, and this is where things get really, really interesting. Because the results were not this simple black and white story of, yay, quitting social media fixed everything. It was so much more nuanced than that.
In fact, the researchers themselves pointed out something totally surprising in their findings. Basically, what they're saying here is that, yeah, things like depression, anxiety, and loneliness did improve over the 2 weeks. But here's the kicker. They improved for everybody. The people who quit social media felt better, sure, but so did the people who didn't quit. There was no real difference between the 2 groups on those measures.
All right, let's really break this down, because this is the core of it. Now, don't get me wrong, the group that quit social media did see some unique benefits. For them, and only them, daily screen time went down, makes sense. And so did their dissatisfaction with their body image. That's a big deal. But here's that crazy twist again. Both groups, the quitters and the non-quitters, felt less depressed, less anxious, and less lonely. And get this, both groups actually felt better about their appearance by the end of the 2 weeks.
So what is the huge takeaway here? It seems like taking a break, a detox, can definitely help with very specific things, like if your screen time is out of control or you're struggling with body image. But, and this is so important, it seems like just the act of being aware, being part of a study where you have to think about your phone use every day, that alone had this incredibly powerful positive effect on everyone involved. Just being mindful was enough to boost mood and make people feel less alone. Okay, so that's the science. But what does this all mean for you and me in the real world? How do we actually apply this to our own lives?
All right, let's wrap this up with the key things you should remember. First, let's be clear. The connection between problematic phone use and mental health struggles is absolutely real. That's a given. Second, if you have a specific goal, like cutting down your screen time, a targeted detox can really work. But third, and this might be the most powerful point of all, you might not need to quit everything entirely. Simply becoming more aware, more mindful of your habits can make a huge difference in how you feel. It's not about elimination, it's about being intentional.
And this really puts the whole thing in perspective. As the researchers say, this is a major public health concern that's still evolving. And the biggest puzzle we need to solve is figuring out that fine line, the line between when our tech is helping us and when it starts to hurt us. And that really leaves us with one final big question to ask ourselves. When it comes to our digital well-being, is the answer really about less screen time? Or is it about more intention? Is it just about counting the minutes? Or is it about making those minutes truly count? All the research we just looked at seems to point to that second one. Thanks for digging into this with me.
If you want to analyze medical questions yourself in seconds, using evidence-based medicine principles, the link to the service is below the video.